Well, it's the end of yet another week, and here on this channel, that means one thing and one thing only. Every weekend, I post an episode of this series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week based on what's going on at the time, and then I choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week has been very eventful, and there's definitely a lot to talk about as a result. In order to submit your submissions, I make a community post on YouTube, either on the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you see on your screen now. So if you want to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Before we start though, it turns out about 67% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel. So please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first take we'll be discussing comes to us from Didi, and he says basically that Jamal Murray is the most overrated player in the NBA right now, he's not all-star caliber, and his aesthetically pleasing game combined with his playoff explosion last year has people thinking he's much better than he actually is right now. Okay, so this one was very loaded with a lot to unpack, and while it definitely comes across as a harsh assessment of Jamal Murray, I do believe that there is some truth in what he's saying, just maybe not as extreme as he's making it out to be. Throughout his entire career, Jamal Murray has mostly been an exciting, explosive scorer who, as we said before, has a very diverse scoring ability that is definitely aesthetically pleasing to fans of the game to watch him play. He has the look of a top-tier scorer, and in the playoffs, he played better than he ever had in his life. But that run seems to be an outlier compared to what he actually is, as once again this year, he hasn't taken that leap overall. Despite his scoring average being up this season from last, albeit by less than a point, both his field goal percentage and three-point percentage are down from last year at 44% from the field and 32% from three. Most view him as someone with legitimate all-star potential, and the expectation that the playoffs last year would help him make that leap fully this year, but so far he just hasn't done it. Is he the most overrated player in the NBA right now? I probably wouldn't go that far like the original take did, but I do see where he's coming from with this, and there is at least a little bit of truth to it. The next take we'll be discussing comes to us from XYZ, and he says that the Brooklyn Nets will not work, I'm assuming he means at the level that most expect from them, unless they get another capable big man on the team. The Nets made waves when they went out and traded for James Harden to add to their already potent duo of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, making for one of the most talented big threes we've seen on paper. However, so far in the early going of this tandem, things have been a bit rocky, and after suffering back-to-back losses to the Cleveland Cavaliers, some of their flaws have definitely been exposed. The defense is porous, the bench has no depth, but the one thing Nets fans have been adamant about most of all is the fact that DeAndre Jordan just isn't a good enough big man to be starting as a center in the NBA anymore, and at the moment, he's the only legitimate option they have at that spot. The Nets are allowing an absurd amount of points in the paint this year, and their lack of any sort of rim protection makes the overall defensive issues that much worse. Right now, Jordan is pretty much just a serviceable big man who works as a pick-and-roll lob threat, who does a decent job grabbing rebounds too, but his days as a top-tier rim protector are long gone. Yes, the perimeter defense isn't very good right now either, but being able to at least protect the rim would mask some of those issues at least enough to allow their high-powered offense to take over. They're very low on assets at the moment after all of the moves they've made, so this is going to be a difficult area to address if they want to make trades or sign someone, and going through the season expecting to be an elite team struggling this much in one end of the floor could definitely end up being problematic. The next take we'll be discussing comes to us from Grant, and he says that Payton Pritchard is the second coming of Steve Nash, who is in the Hall of Fame. Now, usually for the titles of these videos, I take one of the ones I discuss and embellish them a little bit for the sake of YouTube and everything like that, but this take is so outlandish that I didn't even have to change anything about it for today's title. Listen, I know we all get incredibly excited for young players on our favorite teams playing well and showing promise for the future, and Payton Pritchard Pritchard has undoubtedly been a bright spot for the Celtics this season, but we need to take some deep breaths before comparing him to one of the greatest point guards of all time. Nash's basketball IQ, court vision, playmaking ability, incredible scoring efficiency, and overall poise running the show throughout his career is stuff that can rarely be replicated, and ultimately, I think this comparison just comes from the fact that Pritchard is a white basketball player shooting the ball well. There's nothing here, it's just not true, and we'll move on from that. The next take we'll be discussing comes to us from Bill, and he says that Lonzo Ball will be completely out of the NBA in 2 to 3 years if he does not improve as a player. This season has not gotten off to a very good start for Lonzo Ball, who many thought would be ready to take some strides as a point guard and command the lead role on this promising Pelicans team that he has around him, but almost across the board he's regressed. He is scoring a tiny bit more points per game, but he's far less efficient in doing so, only making 39% of his shots and a disappointing 28% of his threes. Last season he showed a lot of improvement with his perimeter shooting, making them at an above average league rate, so the decline now, ranking as one of the worst shooters there is tough to defend. Additionally, he's averaging fewest assists per game of his career as well, which is very confusing considering he now has Zion Williamson seemingly fully healthy around him, he's still got Brandon Ingram playing great alongside him, and guys like JJ Redick reliably space the floor spotting up for him to find them for dimes from the perimeter. He's not trending in the right direction at all, but going back to the original take, no, I do not think at all that his career is in jeopardy. Even with all of those struggles, he still does a lot of the little things that don't get picked up in the box score. He's a selfless player always looking to make the right play, and most importantly, he's a very good defensive player out on the perimeter, which is something teams will always value from him. Being completely out of the league is just not something that I see happening, no matter how disappointing he's been overall. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Alvin, and he says that the Raptors will still be a playoff contender by the time the season ends. The Raptors season has been way worse so far than anyone could have imagined it being to start, as they've been hovering around the bottom of the standings throughout, and currently have a record of 6 wins and 9 losses. But the thing about the East this year is that because of injuries, COVID, and other circumstances, so many teams are packed together in the standings, and even after the rough start the Raptors have had, they're literally only 1 game out of a playoff spot right now in the standings. The Raptors have a ton of experienced contributors, Pascal Siakam is starting to get going again, and they're finding their groove, so with so much season left and so much basketball left to be played, I have no doubt in my mind that they'll make the playoffs. In fact, I would be more surprised if they didn't make it than if they do end up making the final cut. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the topics we discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.